you are ready, over to you, Karim.
Well, good morning from Atlanta, everyone. I'm back home in Atlanta, Georgia, today, and wanted to thank everybody for taking a few minutes to hear about the news. For those of you who are able to join us in Tampa at the beginning of the year at the CMS Experts Kickoff, you might have heard me talking about a lot of hypothetical and theoretical cases. Well, I couldn't say at the time, but obviously we were already working on this as a group. So to give you a very quick brief for those of you who don't know, not last September when Matt Mullenweg went on stage and started fighting with WP Engine, but last October when Matt Mullenweg and Automatic decided to change a piece of software, a plugin within the plugin repository. That really became a problem for the enterprise. We honestly realized at the time that while this is an open source project, there was a single point of failure for supply chain security. So a lot of my customers and clients came to me not from their usual CMO or CIO point of view, but their chief legal officers saying, this is not acceptable. At least with large SaaS products and CMSs, we know where the content comes from and where the updates come from. So this needs to be solved. Some of us had some conversations with Matt and folks around the existing infrastructure, and we're very quickly told that nothing would change. So in December, Joost and I posted articles talking about what an infrastructure might look like and what needed to happen. And for our trouble, we were banned, as were many others, along with a lot of folks who all of a sudden, because their livelihood was dependent on WordPress, were worried about what they were going to do. So long story short, a group of groups formed to start working on what that might look like, and taking cues from the architecture that we spoke about, and another project at the time, which was a mirror of .org called Aspire Press. We brought that together to create a federated group of repositories that not only services how updates are served to the WordPress community, but also fundamentally changes how the plugin or module ecosystem works for WordPress. No longer will it be one single point of failure. No longer is there a single repository, but you could also upload anything from free plugins that are hosted on your own GitHub and have that work through DID instead of simple slugs with enhanced security. But also we can put in directly commercial plugins, because one of the big problems in the WordPress world for a long time has been trying to understand how to move from a free plugin to a commercial plugin for the end users. So bringing that all back together into one place. A lot of people assumed this was solved in the early days of the end of last year by hosts simply putting up mirrors of .org, but those mirrors only did updates and only really did minimal addressing of some of the larger parts that are hosted by WordPress.org. It ends up being a much larger thing than just updates. So this was a successful attempt to actually create a decentralized way so that not only the core project is open source, but anybody could host their own federated repository. I'll just add that in this overview, that a great example of this is you don't have to be a host. One of our clients, one of the world's largest media companies and entertainment companies, is going to be putting their own infrastructure possibly in front of their firewall that is just a mirror of everybody else. So it's addressable, publicly findable, and part of the the federated infrastructure, but then they're also going to put one possibly behind their infrastructure because, for example, maybe they only have less than 100 out of the 70,000 plugins that they want made available only within their infrastructure. They want to have timing when a non-security update comes out of anything. They want to give a 10-day window for their own security team and their own process to work through that code before it's available within their ecosystem inside the firewall. Those types of things are now possible. So they can move off of a very expensive containerized way of updating every single website to a more traditional system of actually just updating the website without the major cost of having developers on every single update. That is a giant overview, and I'd love to just jump in with, answering questions or digging into some direction that somebody is more curious about.
Thank you very much, Karim. I don't know if it makes sense, or if you have it, or Simon, or Ryan, or anybody else has like a slide or two just to give us like an overview of, all right, this is the FAIR project. If you have, perhaps you could put it up. I could also perhaps hand it over to you, Simon. I know you went to Basel. Perhaps you could share your perspective, if you don't mind, Simon.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, it was really impressive to hear about. I didn't know anything about the project before. I was at the altconf.org side event, which is kind of the main reason I went to Basel, really, because I was interested in what was happening in the WordPress world. So I was very impressed by the amount of organisation that seems to have thought has gone into it. You've obviously got loads of very talented people behind it. The Linux Foundation is backing it, which seems really important because you've kind of got this trustworthiness kind of inbuilt with that a bit. I haven't had a chance to play with it very much. I've had a bit of a review of the GitHub repo just to have a bit of a read around, but it sounds like a very solid, kind of well thought out way forward that hopefully kind of overcome some of these problems with kind of lack of trust that, unfortunately, the WordPress leadership has kind of created over the last 6 months or so. Because before this, I didn't see any evidence that that line of work was likely to change or bring people in. And I know the FAIR team have talked about this could be used by WordPress, so I hope they're open to stuff like this. Time will tell, I guess.
So Simon, to address some of your points, absolutely. Very quickly, we ended up being over 300 people, and how 300 people were able to keep a secret for 6 months is beyond me. But we were actually pretty successful. But very quickly, we realized that the Aspire Press project was something put together by Sarah and her team as a simple mirror to allow people to switch if they didn't want to be on .org. And very quickly, we realized that with no judgment towards anybody, over time, just having an alternative, anything could change. So the important part for us was A, creating it in a federated way, and B, coming up with a governance system that could be trusted by all. Because while today my clients trust me, and they have for the last 20 years, we've been working with this major entertainment company, things could change, right? There's the bus factor. So what we ended up doing is going to the Linux Foundation and saying, you have decades of experience with open governance, with being trusted. Can we work with you? And they've been absolutely amazing. They've been amazing to work with. They've been very supportive. Without any monetary input, they brought in their entire team to work on everything from the legal aspects to the formation aspects, to introducing us in the middle of the project to other projects of theirs. They have a project that's specifically looking at how to build successful repositories. The OpenJS project, CNCF, they're all very open to having conversations with us right up front and giving us a lot of good information on how to form correctly since day one.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I just pulled this up.
So I was going to say one question I had was, are you planning to have some kind of list of plugins or something like this on the Fair website in the future? And if you do, you're thinking about ways of communicating trustworthiness for plugins or quality, anything like that? Or
So perhaps before you reply, Karim, just can you hold that question in memory for 30 seconds? I just pulled up the press release. I think most people on this call probably don't follow the Linux Foundation. You may have heard of it, but just for context, also for those who might have joined 30 seconds late, I pulled up the press release here, and I think it's interesting to see the mentioning of vendor-neutral package management for content management system. That does perhaps sound quite geeky. I think that's another way of saying this supply chain that's the term you've been using, right, Karim? And then as an overview, here are the 4 bullets that I think is the key part of the Fair package manager.
Right. I will get to answering that question, but in this press release, you can very quickly realize that I'm not taking a shot at commercial CMSs. I'm talking about every CMS I've ever known for the last 30 years has gone through a bell curve, a cycle of popularity, adoption, and then at some point, there's a defining factor, whether it's financial or some other factor, where it has challenges. What we've tried to create is we've really tried to create a future for the WordPress project where it was not dependent on any one company's direction, so that for the first time that I can remember, besides Typo 3, there is a road moving forward for WordPress that does not tie it to a commercial company that has commercial interests in taking it in one way or the other. And that's the main reason to go to the Linux Foundation. They can steward a governing board that keeps it in the center track, so to speak, if that makes sense.
And then, if you don't mind, let's do Simon's question, and then there's another question or 2 in the queue. But why don't you do Simon's first?
So Simon, I believe you're asking about the availability of plugins. Here's the beautiful thing. Right now, there's several distribution channels that have already had the plugin for a while and have been testing it, and the tests look good. As this network starts to go live, it will be completely available to anybody to make their plugins available in it. There is no barrier to entry for the publicly available repositories. As I said, there might be some enterprises who put their repositories behind a firewall, but the beautiful point about this is that a lot of the distribution channels that we're talking to are talking about being failovers for each other. The co-opetition aspect of this is amazing. I see Roland has joined us. Hello, Roland. So the bottom line here is that anybody will be able to upload their plugins or register their plugins, because they can register their plugins even within their own GitHubs through DIDs, register their plugins into the publicly available repositories. So there'll be a really open distribution system available for them. I hope that answers the question, Simon.
Thank you, Karim. Let's go to Lucy and then Roland. Lucy first.
Thank you, Janice. What I'm concerned about is that we've had a lot of issues over the years with plugins coming out that don't have accessibility in them, some that do have accessibility built into them. Is there going to be some commitment to keeping the accessibility that already is existing and improving the accessibility that's out there, is what my concern would be. You know, I stick with Drupal and WordPress because I know that both have a fairly large accessibility community, but going to a new distribution system without, you know, known entities doing accessibility, frankly, scares the daylights out of me.
Well, following the WordPress world right now, accessibility has been a giant challenge, and so has GDPR, and so has the new upcoming European legislation. So one of the things that we've been committed to is making it more available for all three of those communities to try and centralize on it. This first version worked very much on GDPR and fixing a lot of the GDPR issues around WordPress and the CRA issues that are upcoming. We're working with PatchStack and other companies directly to try and figure out what's going on more with the CRA and what a plan looks like. For those of you who might have caught Matt's speech on stage, just to be blunt, he's got a very American point of view on the CRA. And we're trying to make sure that there's an alternative, because those same rules will be coming to the United States sooner or later, depending on what happens politically, and we all need to be prepared for that. As far as accessibility, it's about bringing the teams and letting them have direct access. Up until now, with the funneled way that WordPress.org worked, they were handicapped. Now they have more access than ever. I do want to note that Ryan McHugh joined the call, and he is literally one of the co-chairs of the technical steering committee of FAIR. I'm just a glorified spokesman. So Ryan, if you had anything to anything to add to that, please do.
Yeah, certainly I can. Apologies if the background noise is loud, by the way. I'm in a hotel lobby. I think we've covered quite a lot of it. Something that we are modeling our decentralization on, though, is Blue Sky and the way that they do decentralization. And they have this thing that they call stackable moderation, or kind of layered moderation, where you can have kind of various services that say, hey, you know, this is great or this is terrible for various different reasons. So you might have a moderation service that checks for, you know, are these things verified to be secure? You know, are they verified for privacy? And, you know, are they, you know, maybe manually checked for accessibility? And so actually, we think there are ways in which we can actually promote more accessible things and potentially actually level up the system with regards to that. One of my co-chairs, Mika Epstein, who was the basically the entirety of the plugins review team for quite a few years, is currently working on kind of moderation guidelines, you know, best practices, things like that. And I expect that security and privacy and accessibility will be part of that.
Thank you, Ryan.
So Ryan is talking more about the roadmap as well as where we are. I've been trying to stay away from some of the roadmap issues, but you can see that there are solid plans towards it. Thank you.
Let's hand over to Roland. Did you want to say something, or?
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Karim. First, I want to say congrats. I think super impressed personally, and I think I can speak on behalf of Pantheon as well for that. And also, we are happy because there's no war that came out of that, honestly. So there's no big backlash. I think that's a good sign. We see a path, kind of, I think, hopefully. My question was very much along the line of the one from Lucy, and was around moderation, quality control, and how people like us or others should envision the future of FAIR when it comes to this role of quality control, whether it's accessibility or something else. I think like WordPress.org had some good points, but also it was not always perfect. So I see something more distributed, interesting. I was curious to hear about that. You already addressed part of this. I don't know if you have, beyond accessibility, beyond the peer-to-peer model, if there's any community aspect of that. How do you see things organizing around that?
There is. I'm going to be very politically blunt. The security and moderation aspect of WordPress up until now has been left up to just WordPress.org, and it could have advanced much further. There are a lot of companies. I mentioned PatchStack earlier, but there's others as well. There's lots of accessibility companies that are very interested in creating infrastructures around raising the quality of what's submitted to the infrastructure. So the reason why I believe Ryan was also referencing Mika and the fact that Mika for 10 years ran the plugin infrastructure at .org is that was a very manually intensive process, and it really wasn't where we wanted it to be anyway.
Mhm.
So with the advent of what we've all been seeing in the last 2 years around some of the automation and some of the AI, plus how we can now distribute some of these ideas around uploading and checking quality, we feel like it's going to get better. There was a recent article posted by Yoast on his personal blog around the plugin infrastructure at the moment on .org and the quality of plugins that have been submitted lately. What all of us are calling vibe coding has seen an increase in those plugins, but those plugins are all less than 100 installs each.
Mhm.
So it's getting watered down, and it's getting harder and harder to find quality modules for WordPress. This needs to be addressed by systems that have yet to be built, but that's why we created this foundation layer, so that these systems can be built in the open. The best security is open source security, in my view, because you have the entire world both trying to support it and the dark world trying to hack it all at the same time. And we will see where we get. But now we have this solid foundation that's available. That's how I see it rolling.
Understood. Thank you. Thanks, Karim.
Then back to you, Lucy.
So I'm going to talk from a side of the community that I don't often talk from, but in academia, the school I used to work for, Berkeley, we had thousands of websites on WordPress, and we have no resources to do things like migrate these and make sure that, if we do want to switch, they're going to stick with WordPress because they have no choice. How are you going to simplify this so that these organizations that might want to switch to your infrastructure, have the ability to do that with, say, only content providers having access to the ability to do so?
So I'm going to keep it simple, and then if Ryan wants to jump in, but this infrastructure has two parts. It has the server infrastructure, and it has a WordPress plugin. If you personally yourself, your one WordPress site that you have yourself, your blog, wanted to switch over to this architecture today, all you have to do is install this plugin, and automatically everything's moved over. It's that simple at the moment. For distribution systems, they can make this what's called an MU plugin, a must-use plugin, and then their entire infrastructure, like a university, is moved over to this infrastructure. So there is already one major American university on the East Coast that I'm not at liberty to name that is playing with this code and is looking at upping their own version of this. And then throughout all their WordPress sites, this plugin will be pushed to their WordPress sites. And with a flip of the switch, they're now on the FAIR infrastructure instead of .org.
Ryan, did you want to chip in? I want to use the last 5 minutes also for something else, but if you have a brief comment, Ryan.
Yeah, just very quickly, as Karim kind of says, we're working with all sorts of distribution partners, whether those are hosts, whether those are tools that help install WordPress, whether those are large organizations that use it and have their own deployment processes. And our goal is to make it as easy as possible to use. So whether you want to use it as a plugin and just kind of drop it into existing installations, whether you want to swap out your existing process that uses, like the WordPress zip, whether it's Composer, all of those sorts of things, our plan is to support all of those and make it very easy for organizations to swap things in. So our plan is to work with the community and to work with those partners on, how can we make this as easy as possible for you to kind of get all this new functionality and achieve that kind of independence.
Great. So we have 4 minutes left. I was just hoping, Karim, and perhaps also with you, Ryan, that we could zoom a little bit out at the end. And okay, that was the FAIR project. Like Roland said, congratulations. I was also impressed at hearing that 300 people were in on it. It, I think, goes to say something about the sheer size of WordPress, which is one thing that I've been reminded of in this WordPress debacle for the last 6 months. Can you, one of you perhaps, tell us a little bit about what is the broader impact here for the future of WordPress?
So the bottom line here is that we had over 300 people who knew about it and were supporting it. There was a core group of less than 60 developers who were working on it full time, so to speak. But what it does for the WordPress community is we're trying to ensure the next 20 years of whomever wants to use this infrastructure can own their own data, their own code, their own processes, and their own roadmap, most importantly. And that's what's the most important thing here. The code that we've all come to love and enjoy in our ecosystem called WordPress needs to be able to breathe, needs to be able to evolve, and needs to be able to move forward. It's important for every user type, from all the way up into the enterprise, all the way down to the single blog user, to feel like there is someone working on its future. And that's all we've tried to create, is an open future for it.
Great. Thank you very much. Inspiring to hear 20-year perspective. Ryan, I think if I remember correctly, that's like twice your age. Oh, sorry. How was it? You were 20 when you started? No, sorry.
It's about as long as I've been working on WordPress, but again, so.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Ryan is the original architect of the REST API in WordPress.
Exactly. Very happy to have both of you with us. Thank you for sharing openly from the journey. I think it's exciting. I think the broader digital experience community also relies on WordPress. And when WordPress is suffering and innovation stalls and security problems arise and plugins lower in quality, I think it negatively impacts all of us. So I think it's, I really appreciate that you share openly. And I think there's also innovation here happening that, like you said, Karim, is not just relevant to open source, but is relevant to anybody. I think this problem that you have experienced in WordPress has kept marketing managers up at night, IT managers up at night.
Yeah.
So I get a little bit the sense here that there is a path for them to begin to worry about other things.
Absolutely. The most important thing to remember is this is still WordPress. There is no difference. It's the underlying architecture that just gives you a choice of where to get your updates and new products from, but it is still 100% WordPress.
That's all we had. Right on time. Thank you, Karim. Thank you, Ryan, and congratulations once again. We'll keep a close look on this, and let's talk again soon.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.